The Strange Tale of the Unicorn. Long ago, there was a village called Roundy because all the houses were built round a big ring of green grass. The houses were round too, and it really was the funniest little place you ever saw. All the houses had people living in them except one tiny round cottage, which had only one living room and one bedroom in it. Nobody wanted to live there because the chimney smoked dreadfully, the walls were damp, and there were hundreds and hundreds of black beetles living in the kitchen, so the little round house stood empty for many a year. Then one day, a strange creature came to Roundy village. It was a unicorn. You must have seen pictures of them, horse-like creature with one long horn sticking right out from the centre of their foreheads. The people flocked to see the strange animal, and the children pointed their fingers at it and asked what it was. On its back it carried 3 great bundles, and it looked all around the little village as it passed through, and suddenly it saw the empty cottage. It walked up to the little broken gate and opened it. It peered in at the windows, and then pushed the door open and went inside.
"This will do for me," said the unicorn in a deep voice. 2 rooms are just enough."
So the unicorn settled down to live in the cottage all by himself. He undid his bundles with his hooves and spread them out. There was a table, a bed, 2 chairs, pots and pans, and a few dishes. Not very much to furnish a house with, but his cottage was so small that even those few things seemed to fill it.
"It's dirty," said the unicorn, looking around. "I must get someone in to come and clean it. The walls are damp too. I must get some wood and light a big fire."
He went to the next cottage and knocked at the door. Mrs. Dimple had quite a fright when she opened it and saw the unicorn standing there.
"Can you tell me where I can get someone to come in and clean for me?"
asked the unicorn politely. "Dear me, you're not really going to live next door, are you?" asked Mrs. Dimple in surprise. "Fancy a unicorn living in the cottage."
"Well, why not?" said the unicorn. "I must live somewhere. Come, tell me who will clean my house for me."
"Do you see that cottage painted white over there?" asked Mrs. Dimple, pointing across the green grass. "Well, Dame Hobble lives there with her daughter and stepdaughter. One of them will be sure to clean up for you."
"Thank you,"
said the unicorn, and went to call at the white-painted cottage. Dame Hobble opened the door and gaped at him in surprise. But when she heard that he had plenty of money and would pay well for his cleaning, she stopped staring at him and called Melia, her daughter. "Melia will clean for you," she said. "Won't you, Melia?" Melia looked sulky. She hated cleaning, but when her mother whispered to her that she'd be very well paid for her work, she said yes. She would go and clean up the cottage for the unicorn.
"Come tomorrow,"
said the unicorn, and went back to his cottage. "Now you mind you clean well for him," said Melia's mother to her pouting daughter. "He's rich." "I don't like working for silly old unicorn," sulked Melia. "Why can't Susan go?" "Well, do you want Susan to get all the money for it then?" asked her mother. "Let us go together, and I'll make her do most of the work," said Melia artfully. "We can give her a little of the money, mother, but I'll see that she does nearly all the work." "Very well," said her mother, who hated Susan, her pretty stepdaughter, and was quite willing that she should go and do most of the work for a tiny part of the money. So the next day the 2 girls went across the green to the unicorn's cottage. Susan had on a strong overall and carried a bucket, soap, cloths and brushes with her. Melia hadn't even troubled to put on an apron, and all she carried was a duster. The unicorn opened the door. Melia giggled at the sight of him, but Susan looked into his deep brown eyes and wondered why they seemed so unhappy. The 2 girls set to work. At least, Susan began to scrub the floors and wash the walls, while Melia wandered about prying into the cupboards and drawers. The unicorn caught her peeping and spoke to her sharply, and she answered him rudely. He looked at her so strangely that she took up her duster and began to rub the windows with it. Susan worked hard all that week. She made the floors shine and windows glitter, the fireplace bright, and all the furniture gleam like mirrors. Melia only gave her 2pence a day out of the money that the unicorn handed her, but she did not dare to complain. Week after week, Melia and Susan went to cook and clean for the unicorn. Susan made him pretty curtains to hang in the windows. She caught a hedgehog and left it in the kitchen at nights to catch and eat all the hundreds of black beetles. She chopped up wood for his fire and even dug up his garden for him, for he could not do very much with hooves instead of hands. Each week the unicorn paid out wages to Melia because she was the elder of the 2, and each week Melia gave Susan only a few pence for all her work. The unicorn watched and wondered, but said nothing at all. Susan was always polite and kind to him, but Amelia was rough and rude. She thought it was strange for a unicorn to live in a house. Why didn't he live in a field and eat grass? Then one week, when Amelia had burnt the cake she tried to make, upset a bowl of water on the floor and forgotten to mop it up, and stolen half of a fruit pie from the larder, the unicorn wouldn't give her any wages.
"No," he said. "You're a bad girl, Amelia. You are lazy and do very little, and the little you do is always bad. Why should I give you the money? I am sure you don't give Susan her share. Here, Susan, take the money. You are not to give any of it to Amelia. It's all for you. And in the future, I don't want Amelia to come and work for me, but only you."
Well, Amelia was so angry that she ran straight home to her mother and told her. When Susan got home, they took the money from her and scolded her, and then they told her that she must go and work for the unicorn as he said, but every week they would take away her money. "That will teach you to get into the silly unicorn's good books and push Amelia out of them," said her stepmother angrily. Poor Susan. She was very miserable. She went to work for the unicorn as usual, but every week all her money was taken away, and she was never allowed even a penny for herself. Her clothes fell into rags, and at last even the unicorn noticed how shabby and sad she looked.
"Why don't you buy yourself a new dress?" he asked. "You get enough money, Susan. What do you do with it all?"
Susan didn't like to tell tales of her stepmother and stepsister. She went red and said nothing at all.
"Poor little Susan," said the unicorn suddenly. "Do they let you keep any of your money?"
Susan felt the tears coming into her eyes, and she wiped them away. The unicorn gave a heavy sigh, and she looked at him in surprise. His eyes were so sad that she couldn't bear to see them. She ran to him and flung her arms around his neck. "Don't look like that," she cried. "I love you, dear kind unicorn. We're both unhappy, so let us comfort one another." She kissed the unicorn's velvety nose, and then sprang away in surprise. What was this? What was happening? Marvel of marvels, the unicorn no longer stood there, but a young prince with thick black locks and shining eyes.
"Susan, you kissed me and broke the spell. You loved me and destroyed the enchantment that made me a unicorn. I was changed into that strange shape by a wizard whom I accidentally knocked down when I was out riding. I was sad and unhappy, for none of my people knew me then, and I was forced to wander out in the world by myself, miserable and lonely."
"A prince," said Susan. "Oh, how wonderful! But, sir, forgive me for kissing you. I thought you were just a unicorn."
"I shan't forgive you,"
cried the prince, taking her into his arms and hugging her in delight.
"I'll only forgive you on one condition. Come back to my palace and marry me."
The prince sent a messenger to bring his carriage from his father's palace, and very soon there came not one carriage, but many, all rolling into the little village of Roundy. The king and queen were in one, 2 princes and a princess in another, and a whole crowd of nobles followed. They were all overjoyed to hear from the prince again, for they had thought he was lost forever.
"This is Susan who's going to marry me,"
said the prince, and the king and queen kissed her lovingly. All the people of Roundy village came out to see what was happening, and how Amelia and her mother stared to see Susan climbing up into the king's own carriage with a handsome prince. "Goodbye, stepmother," cried Susan. "The unicorn is really a prince, and I'm going to marry him." How angry Amelia was! She at once set out to find another unicorn and keep house for him. When he asked her to marry him, she said yes, but dear me, he wasn't a prince at all, but just an old, bad-tempered unicorn who did nothing but order her about from dawn till dusk, and a very good thing, too. Susan married her prince, and so the history books of that country say. They lived happily ever after.